Someone You Should Know, a program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, hello. I'll welcome you to another edition of Someone You Should Know. As always, thanks for taking the time to drop in. Each week, we try to bring you shows that are funny, edgy, educational, but entertaining. That's the key word to it. And also, for your information, we are brought to you this week by Irving Chung, who is a franchise specialist. You know, there's going to come a time in your life when you're going to hang up the keys to the shop and say, now what am I going to do? One of the things you might want to consider is going into a franchise, big or small. Irving has all the answers. He's a franchisee himself, and so that's why he helps others try and find a franchise opportunity that's just right for them. Reach out, free consultation. Irving Chung, franchise specialist, and a really nice guy. Well, I want to welcome to the show today somebody who I often do have people on my show that have more stuff on their plate than I could ever try to heap on mine. And this is one of them, Russ Farnsworth. Welcome to Someone You Should Know.
Hi.
I'm really glad to have you here because I reached out to invite you to the show and you responded rather quickly, and I was very pleased to see that. And while I was waiting for a response from you, I was going through some of your bio information, and my gosh, you have packed an awful lot into your life already.
I have.
Where are you from originally, Russ?
Well, I was born in a little town called Fall River, which is in Northern California, just south of Oregon. And I stayed sort of in that area until I was 18 years old. So I grew up in a very rural area of Northern California where we get all four seasons and you've got to spend all summer cutting firewood for the rugged winters.
Right. You know, but it's a beautiful part of the country.
It definitely is. There's millions of trees. And when you get out and you can look at a hillside or a valley, it's just like a sea of trees. It's amazing.
And that part of California, when you mention California, people obviously always think of Los Angeles and San Francisco and Sacramento, all the heavily populated areas, and they forget that as you get inland and all, there are some absolutely beautiful mountain ranges and hills and hiking trails and all. And I have friends that are up in the Oregon area too, and it's just as beautiful up in the Northwest. And so you then when you said through 18, then what happened to Russ Farnsworth?
Well, I didn't enjoy growing up in that area a whole lot. There's not a lot to do, and the jobs, or job market is pretty bad as well.
Other than chopping wood.
Right. Yeah. So, and if you wanted to make any real money there, you pretty much had to work for the lumber mill, which is a hard way to make a buck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I left when I was 18 and wanted to try to make it as a musician. So that was kind of my initial focus going out into life.
And you did that, and you even carried that forward. You were not only a musician, but you went a little further and started doing recording and producing and getting involved in that end of it too. And then you even expanded beyond music into filmmaking.
Yes, my mother was a great inspiration for me. This is my adoptive mother. I was adopted, just in case that comes up later. But my adoptive mother was an amazing pianist who would play that song, "The Bumble Boogie" from Freddie Martin, and
I
it was
remember
so
that.
amazing. That was such a complicated and incredible piece of music, and to watch somebody play that was just mind blowing as a kid. And so that really started a fire in me. And she was also a photographer, a writer. She was a painter. She was a sculptor. So she just really had somehow, a grasp on all that stuff and was able to kind of be proficient in all of it.
And it kind of rubbed off on you then too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Just as an aside, I took piano for many, many years. And when I was a kid, I'm going to guess around 10 or 11, I learned how to play Bumble Boogie. And that the left hand part of Bumble Boogie is incredible. It's kind of that old jitterbug type type music.
yes,
When you mentioned Bumble Boogie, all of a sudden my Rolodex went backwards.
that was
But
a great piece of music.
the
It'll stand the test of time.
and what instruments did you play?
Guitar was my primary instrument. I also played bass guitar, and I, without a singer to work with, I often ended up singing on some of the tracks, although I don't really consider myself to be much of a singer. And then I also had a drum machine, and so I could program the drum parts for some of the music if I didn't have a drummer to work with.
Now, were you formally trained in guitar, or is it something you just picked up?
Something I just picked up, and I always had a passion for guitar that centered around sort of just exploring the instrument rather than being taught. And it's a difficult way to try to learn how to play an instrument
It is.
because you don't have any foundation. But I thought it was very interesting and very fun, and I thought I came up with a lot of you know strange compositions. And sometimes people that I know who know theory would listen to something that I wrote and they would just be kind of boggled by it, like, oh, you're using two different modes, you're switching in between two different modes there. So like the way that you approach music ends up being different than somebody who knows a lot of theory.
Now, did you make that your career, or what was your main? I guess the words are source of income.
Yeah, I went into tech. So when I was in my 20s, I started to have back problems from all the early days of lifting firewood and all that. And then working in restaurants had kind of taken its toll. And so by the time I was 22, I realized I had to probably get a corporate job. And so I ended up doing that. And it was certainly much harder to try to make music a career if you're working a 9 to 5 gig. So it was a compromise, but it was a necessary one. And having a job in tech actually worked out really well for me, and I had a great life for those years that I was working in tech.
Well, folks, as we are talking with Russ today and all, we're going to be scrolling his website that you can visit to learn more about Russ, and also his email address. So if you want to drop a note to him, he is a jack of all trades. He does a lot of things. I hope we're going to be able to cover several of them. One of them that I want to really cover is, you mentioned that you were adopted. Russ Farnsworth is not your given name. In fact, I figured if you were a musician, you probably had a stage name or something, because you go by, I guess, 3 or 4 different names.
Well, when I was born, my name was Charon Sebastian Pagan, and my birth parents were kind of hippies, so they were kind of out there, and I was named after a master of some kind of Far Eastern religion. And then, of course, when I was adopted, my parents there in Siskiyou County were very conservative, and so my name was changed and became Russ Farnsworth. And yeah, when I got into music and wanted to do that after I turned 18, I met my birth mother and learned a bit about my birth family and my original name. And I did think that Charon Pagan was kind of a cool name, and so I decided to kind of weave the two together and go by R. Charon Pagan as a musician.
But you're going to notice, folks, when they scroll his email address and all, it's Russ and Watson.
Yeah, Watson.
Yeah,
Watson
so
is my significant other. We should have had.
Yeah,
We should have had an image of him to put up, but he's my companion now. He's a great dog. I think he's half American Bulldog and half Pit Bull. He's about 95 pounds, so he's huge, but he's an absolute sweetheart. And when we were living off the grid in the woods, his favorite activity was chasing the bears.
Oh, that's a good sport.
Yeah.
So, are living off the grid, you got to expand upon that a little bit to the
Yeah,
folks. Was that by choice or you got locked out?
it was basically by choice. My mother had acquired a 10-acre parcel in the wilderness of Northern California. And in 1959, she had just gotten married to my dad, and they built a small cabin on the property. And so they used to be able to go there as a little vacation spot. And then in the 80s and 90s, two other neighbors moved in, and our driveway cuts through their properties. And so apparently they wanted to try to eliminate that arrangement. Those arrangements are called easements.
Right.
And if you can buy a property that has easements and then remove those easements somehow, then the property that you have is kind of worth more because now you own the entire thing rather than allowing people to travel through a part of it. So I believe that's the motivation why all this kind of happened when we were living out there, all of the crazy activity with these neighbors and all the criminal things that occurred. But yeah, this property was in our family for a long time. My brothers and my sister and I had a lot of great times hanging out at the cabin. We never wanted to go because there was no electricity, just cold running water from a mountain spring. There was no telephone. And so you were really just isolated and out with nobody to talk to, nobody, your friends, but the family was there. But every time we took a trip, we ended up having an amazing time. That, you know, we would go on a fun hike or a nice hike to a lake where we would go swimming. There was always something that we got into that just made it a blast. So yeah, I wanted to move back there. That was kind of my plan as far as, you know, my last stage of life, that I wanted to go back there and live on that property. Eventually, when my brother and my sister and I all pass away, it will become the inheritance of my niece and two nephews. And so I wanted to build a house on the property and build it up and just make it nice so that they would have a nice piece of property to inherit.
And you know, the one thing that comes to mind when you talk about no electricity and all, that is very often a setting that people who write or compose music or whatever love. They want to get away from everything and be completely with nature to let that creativity flow. And very often, when you talk to musicians like yourself, or writers or philosophers, whatever, they will often tell you that they have gone off into the woods someplace for, you know, months at a time in order to get their thoughts where they want them to be.
Yes. Yeah. And that was a big inspiration for my mother, that property and the whole, what they call the Scott Valley, the surrounding area. And she painted all the mountains, all the peaks, the streams, the pastures with cows in them, and the old houses and old like homestead houses that were just falling apart. All of those were kind of subjects of my mother's paintings, and they were fabulous paintings.
And I think you'll agree that's a part of our landscape that is quickly diminishing.
Yes.
It's going away to development and and they call it progress. I don't necessarily go along with that, but and because of that, I know that you have become an activist a lot within the political arena and all, because I think you and I think a lot alike that everything has gone off kilter. It just is not the way it should be, and we seem to be taking 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. You describe yourself as a self-proclaimed problem solver and intellectual, and I'm curious as to how you see yourself that way and what you did to be able to carry that handle.
Mm.
I know you're well read. You are very very well read and all. But for someone to say that I'm a self-proclaimed problem solver, what is the mindset that Russ Farnsworth gets into in order to say there are problems out there, and as my father taught me, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And I
Yeah,
think you want to be part of the solution.
definitely. And I'm not sure how I stepped into that mindset or how I acquired it. I think that I like to solve puzzles, and so maybe there's some correlation there. When I see things are kind of in disarray, I want to fit them together and make them nice and pretty the way they're supposed to be, or the way that I believe they're supposed to be. So maybe there's some correlation with that. Um, but whenever I see things or hear about things that I think are a problem, a lot of times I will just latch onto it in my mind, and it's hard to let go of it until I can kind of figure out a solution where things could be improved. So it's just something that I do. I think like certain people will have that mental desire to try to repair things or fix things when they see that they're broken.
And do you feel that there are ways that we as individuals can try to fix those things, or is it important that we reach out and band together with other people with a similar thought and try and do it as a group?
Yeah, I think it, we need the group aspect in order to make it successful. Right now, I'm kind of out there pushing my ideas, so I'm on social media a lot, having conversations with people, trying to get them to look away from this partisanship argument. Are you for the Democrats or are you for the Republicans? I think neither one of those two parties has an agenda, a political agenda that really benefits we the people. And that's what we really need. If we all got together and demanded that we had an agenda that actually is going to benefit all of us, that would be the big key, the big game changer there. And then at that point, once we can kind of identify an agenda or a direction to travel, then when everybody gets on board and says, yeah, this is what we need to do, then the politicians will have to go along with it.
I agree, because I think what's happened to the political system is once a politician is elected, they have a tendency to either follow their own agenda or perhaps an agenda that is pushed upon them by a special interest group, and they lose sight of the fact that they were sent there to represent the people back home.
Right.
And very very often, I think we find that the people back home feel one way, and they try to get their elected officials to vote that way, but the elected official may not have that same agenda. And that's one of the key things I think that makes our political system broken.
Yes. And
Yeah.
our government is an absolute octopus. And so even if the person that you elect, if they want to go and do great things for the country, a lot of times they're stopped by the majority leader or the speaker or whoever is on their side, and they'll be told, no, we're not going to vote for this, or no, yes, you have to support this, even if your constituents don't like it. And they can try to push back against that. Very few people ever do, but there's so much power already embedded within Washington that they can basically force out people that don't really go along. And so it makes it very, very difficult to make any headway.
And you have actually taken this a step further, because I mean, with all your other talents, you're also a cartoonist,
Yeah.
and you do political and also non-political cartoons. You can go to the website, and I think you'll see some of Russ's work. Your stuff is great. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
you've got a great talent at it. It's not just stick figures, folks. It's some well thought out cartooning, and well placed. Where did that all come from? I mean, that's why I say every time I turn around, you're into something else.
Yeah. Well, the cartooning was certainly one of the most recent things that I decided to pick up. And I don't really recall how it came about, but obviously I've always loved political cartoons, and I think it's great when you can take a big issue and kind of boil it down into one frame or just one strip, and you can kind of reveal an entire philosophy within that. That's super, super powerful if you can do that. And I definitely wanted to try to attempt that. And I really am a horrible artist. And one of my cartoons, you may not have seen that one, but it is actually stick figures. That was the one that I drew myself, and it's a horrible artistry, but I hope it brings a good message across. And then I also worked with a few artists who were amazing and did great drawings for my cartoons. So I lucked out with that. And then I've also, going back to when I was a musician, used to use Photoshop a lot to create band flyers. And so I use Photoshop just to, I just swipe images off the internet and chop them up and then rearrange them and kind of make my own scene out of it and then create cartoons that way.
I don't doubt that you mentioned the talents that your mom had, and you probably got a lot of that motivation from some of the work that she had done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to bounce around a lot because I got notes here, and there's something that really, I mean, I want to know about this. It says on here not only you worked as a carny and describe to people what is a carny.
A carny is someone who works at a traveling carnival. Those things that set up in your city and then operate for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and then they're up and gone and they're off to the next location.
So what? Did someone come along and say you ought to just run off and join the circus? And you said, "Oh, that's a good idea. I think I will."
It was something like that.
Yeah. I haven't done that, so I think I'll try that.
Yeah. Well, I think I really didn't start off with a whole lot of direction in life. I think we talked a little bit about that before. I wanted to go try to be a musician, but as far as having some type of a job that would help me support that, there wasn't a lot of thought behind it. And so I ended up sometimes where, without a job and not really knowing what to do. And one of those times I happened to be in the Bay Area, and someone I knew wanted me to go to the carnivals because she was going to work at the carnivals and she wanted me to help her watch her daughter. And so I ended up going to do that. And then I ended up getting a job in the carnival myself. And at the time, I had a car and I had a Costco card, which most other carnies didn't. So I could go to like Costco in the area and buy stuff in bulk and then sell it to the other carnies and other people and actually make money doing that. So it was pretty lucrative. And then funny, this is crazy. At the end of it, I worked, just a couple of months, but I got paid. I can't even make the stack high enough on the screen, but in a stack of $1 bills, this giant stack, it was like $2,000 or something in this huge stack of bills.
All in $1 bills.
Yeah. Mostly $1 bills. Yeah.
So I guess that kind of, defines the vagabond life part of you there. Just, well, when something comes up, you're willing to take a shot.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of been willing to put myself out there and not turn down opportunity.
Kind of that vagabond life that you got into, and it seems like you're the kind of guy that somebody says, "Hey, you want to try this?" You're like, "Yeah, I'm game."
Yeah.
So the next one note that I've got here is. You also had a job staking out and serving legal papers on dirty cops.
Yes. And that I did here in Marin County. I have a friend who works at the DA's office. And I'm not sure why I was asked to take this assignment. Maybe they couldn't find anybody else that was willing to do it. I don't know. But again, my willingness to just kind of put myself out there. And I got paid to do it, But yeah, it was kind of fun and just boring, sitting there. But I listened to a lot of podcasts, so that's what I did. I sat and listened to podcasts until I saw activity at the house, and then I'd go up and try to hit them with these legal documents.
I don't know why, but I get the feeling that there's people out there that say, "Well, we got a job for somebody to do, and who's going to do it?" And it's like the old, give it to Mikey. He hates everything. So call Russ Farnsworth. Yeah, he'll go out and do it.
Oh gosh, I'm probably going to get a whole bunch of job offers now. After
Right, yeah.
Raccoon tamer, what?
Yes, yeah. Who's going to go catch that wildlife out there in the woods? Oh, call Russ Farnsworth. He used to be a lumberjack. As what do you see on your horizons? What are the things that you're into now, and what is your passion as you move forward?
Wow, my
That's a
passion.
loaded question, I realize.
Yeah, it's a big one. Well, definitely politics and trying to get the country off this partisanship mindset and onto a mindset that really puts we the people at the focus of everything, and really making our representatives work for us. So that's definitely a huge passion. Until the day I die, I know I will be working at that a lot.
Now, Russ, I'm going to just interject. Do you feel that this is something that you can tackle on a national level, or do you think that your focus should be more on the state or even the local level?
Well, I think that anybody who does any work at the state and local level is awesome, and they are doing excellent work because it's so important. And probably because of my vagabond life and me moving all over the place, I've never lived outside of California, but I've lived from the top of the state to the bottom, and it's a huge state.
Right.
So I've been all over the place and never really found any one place to kind of be my home. So my focus has always been on national politics and much less any kind of local politics. So that's really what I know most about and where my focus is, and trying to make that big change that's going to really try to heal some broken systems within our country. So that's where my focus is. But like I say, anybody who does work at the state and local levels is really doing important work.
Well, I assume that you support term limits in order to get those that have been around for a long time and get them out and make way for fresh new politicians.
Yes.
But what's your opinion of this new breed of politicians that are coming up? We're asking the young people to get involved in politics, and all, but are some of them that are getting involved in politics doing it for all the wrong reasons?
I definitely believe that's true. Yes. A lot of people that are going to get involved in politics, I think it takes a certain type of person to want that job in the first place. And it naturally attracts the wrong people. And so, yeah, we're definitely going to get a lot of people who probably are doing it for the wrong reasons. And they, people sort of define themselves and put it out there. And so if you're not able to see through what their motivations are, it can definitely be a bad thing, and it can lead us in some bad directions.
And that's why I kind of asked you about the local level, because it seems to me that that's where it starts. You get involved in your politics at the local level. Make your neighborhoods safer and better for everyone, and elect the people that have a similar agenda instead of those that are just using local politics to launch their future into state and national politics. Because it begins at home. It begins at home and getting involved. And like you said, you can be one voice, or get together with other people and become a multi voice to make things happen. Uh, and you do that through a lot of the things that you do, through your cartooning, through your writing. You're also involved in comedy, and so you have those outlets in order to spread those ideas and those words to the public. And do you find that enjoyable?
Absolutely. Even my music is almost all political. I would sometimes take on different topics with the lyrics, and I wrote a lot of instrumental music as well. But most of my songs that have words are the words are very political.
So do you get criticized for that?
Not very often. I think that not a lot of people like that, and I have heard. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, like, when I listen to music, I don't want to hear about politics, or I don't want to be thinking about politics. Heavy metal was sort of my forte, my genre in music, and so a lot of heavy metal music is about sort of Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff and medieval times, and that stuff just not what does it for me personally. So yeah, I enjoy doing the politics. I enjoy listening to music that's political, and unfortunately, it's not the most sought after version of music out there. But I that's what I enjoy, and so that's the direction I went with it.
Well, but it's something that people should expose themselves to, because I mean, you don't have to jump into it 100%, but to be aware of what's going on in music and writing and all with regard to politics and everything, I think it is still very, very important.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people hear a lyric that interests them, in a song that they like, they'll start to look into it and be like, well, what exactly is this all about that they're singing about? And they start to look into it and then may actually get more interested themselves.
I know that you had a situation in your life with regard to hatred and profiling, if you will, and in small towns and everything. Would you share some of that experience with the people that are watching and listening, and then because it's something that you have taken on to try and overcome, exposing that small town crime and corruption and hatred and all, and you're not just doing it from a philosophical viewpoint, you're doing it from a personal viewpoint. And if you don't mind, I'd like you to share your story.
Sure. Yeah. And we kind of broached the topic a couple of times already. Um, but when I went up to that property that my mother had acquired and has been in our family for a long time, that's where it all occurred. I went up there to live off the grid, and I was going to work on my inventions. You had mentioned previously about some of the things plan to work on in the future, and I have a few inventions. So that was one of the things that I wanted to take on when I got there. Another idea that I had is a program called Old Fogey Yoga, and I really wanted to help to give that to the people up there, because everybody who grew up in that area, just like me, spent their whole lives lifting a bunch of firewood and hay bales every day, and they've just destroyed their spine. And I've actually been dealing with these issues since I was 22, so I've had a long time to figure out how to make my body do what it needs to do to keep going.
Right.
And so I wanted to share some of those things, different stretches, and the fact that the people who live up there don't they're not, most of them are not the type of people who are going to buy yoga pants and go get a membership at a yoga studio. So
Right.
the idea is to show them, when they're doing a certain task at home, that they can position their body in a way that they're actually going to be exercising muscles, preventing injury, and maybe stretching themselves out in a way that's beneficial. And so they don't have to actually get into fitness, but they can just be more fit by the way that they do things at home. So I'd moved up to this property hoping to kind of to spread that out to the people in
Yep.
the area. When I got there, the neighbors, they realized was coming because I had loaded a bunch of boxes into the cabin that was there. And so they tore up the road with a backhoe. So when I arrived with all of my stuff, 2 truckloads of my belongings, I couldn't actually get up to the cabin, and I had to put all of that stuff into storage. And then, I figured that the issue would be resolved within a few days, and I would just then move up there. But it still isn't resolved. It's been like 4 years, and so being an outsider, even though I grew up in that area, when the local sheriffs arrived, they took the side of the neighbors who were already there. And from what it appears, those 2 neighbors kind of basically prepared for my arrival, telling everybody in the community that I was a bad person, that I was a gun nut, because they saw somebody that had a similar name on Facebook who had pictures with firearms, and they thought it was me. But they kind of had gone through and gotten the community on their side and stacked against me. They had told the sheriffs that we didn't own our property anymore, and that we were just squatters, and that we didn't have an easement, which is a lie. We did. So when I got there, I was just kind of piled on. The sheriff said, "No, you can't go to your property, and we'll arrest you, because we believe these neighbors who said that you don't own your property." So that was the start of it. That was my welcome to the area. It's like, yeah, you're not even going to your own place. Get out.
And yes, I am going to my own place.
Yeah. Well, at the time when I first got there, I wasn't aware of all the documents. I knew we owned the property and I had seen our deed before. But as far as all the easements, I really had not seen every document that was related to how we get to our property. And so I wasn't sure why these people were making these claims, but I also didn't have the documents or the knowledge to really refute them. And so what I started to do then is to go to the courthouse, and I luckily had met a friend. His name is Dan, and he knows much more about the court system than I do. And he showed me how we can get documents at the courthouse and then get those documents stamped with a seal from the court that shows their official documents. And then we can use those documents to show other people, and then, like, show the sheriffs, like, no, we do own our property. Here's our court certified document showing that we own it, and here's the easement going through it. So it took a while. I got all those documents, then consulted with a couple of attorneys. They said that we had every right to go to our property and no one could stop us, not even the sheriffs. So then I tried to meet with the sheriff to show him these documents and explain everything that happened. And this sheriff, I'm not sure if he was, really on board with the crimes, with this underlying fraud that had occurred, because the one neighbor created a fraudulent document that removed our easement clause from their deed. So I don't know if the sheriff was convinced by that document or if he was just simply going along with the whole scam. But he backed the neighbor and said that I would be arrested if I was to go to my own place. So I eventually was able to meet with him. It took several times of trying to contact him, messages to his voicemail, messages left with his secretary. They were all ignored until I sent a certified message, a certified letter. And then I finally got a meeting with the sheriff and showed him the documents. And then in the end, he said, okay, well, if you need to go to your property and, you have any hassles, we'll give you a civil standby. So that's really what I needed. But the sheriff, by the time that he had offered to give me a civil standby, it was too late in the year to rehabilitate the cabin and move in. I really had to get that work started early in the spring. So I had to end up moving somewhere else, pay rent for a year, store all my belongings for a year. And then in 2019, in the spring, I fixed the road and moved on to the property. So it was quite an ordeal just to get to that place, where I was on my property with all my stuff.
Just to get to where you wanted to be peacefully in order to move in your life and with your writings and your inventions. And am I correct that I mean, you had some serious confrontations with some of these neighbors to the point where you lost some of your property.
Yes. Yeah. The neighbors there, they're ruthless people. I've never encountered anything like them in my entire life. And one of them, his son worked for the DA's office, so he's in close with all the judges and the DA. And the other I know is at least close with all the sheriffs. And between the two of them, they've got the entire power structure of the county in their pocket, pretty much. And when I ended up having to move off my property and go live somewhere else, while I was sorting out all the documents and things, my place was burglarized and ransacked and sabotaged. So I lost a lot of property there, thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And then after I moved into the property, that really ratcheted things up even worse. And now, these neighbors were threatening to kill me. One neighbor had pulled his gun on me a couple of times, and one time shot at me 4 times. They would pull guns on my associates. So it was really a pretty ugly situation. And then eventually they burned down the place. They burned down my place, destroyed almost everything that I had. And then after that, I had to live in a tiny little trailer. A 21-foot trailer was all I had parked up there. And I still really didn't have the ability to leave. And if I did leave, whatever I had up there would just get destroyed too. So I really couldn't leave. I had to stay up there and try to protect what little I had left. And then eventually another neighbor that was kind of neutral, apparently they were threatened with getting their stuff burned up, and they thought they might get their house burned down. So they told me that I had to leave, and they told me that someone was coming to get me, and I don't know how many people or who exactly, but basically I was the wrong skin tone to be living in the area, and someone was coming, and I was going to be dealt with. I would have rather stayed there and fought it out. I know I would have had these people outgunned, but I had to park my truck on that family's property. And so when I no longer had their permission to do that, I was forced to leave. I had no other option.
And the hard thing that I'm having with trying to understand this is that this family had history on that property that was right next to the history that your family had with the property right next door.
Yeah.
And it's like a time gone by, almost the Hatfields and the McCoys kind of a situation. And all, I mean, do you feel confident that it has pretty much been resolved so that now you can have that property that you can build on for the sake of your nieces and nephews, as you said?
Unfortunately, no. It's still a big mess, and I took $50,000 to sue these neighbors, just to find out that $50,000 isn't nearly enough, and it's probably going to cost about $200,000. So I don't know how that's all going to end. I'm currently in a lawsuit, which I'm trying to just pause until I can figure out how to move forward with it. But yeah, it's still a mess. And the judge that's presiding over the case, I don't feel that she's following the law.
Yeah.
We had sued the recorder's office of the county because they never should have filed that fraudulent document that the neighbor created. And because we were suing a county agency, it was required by law that the case be moved to a different jurisdiction, but the judge refused to do that. She wanted to be the one that decided the case.
It smacks of that good old boy type theory.
Yeah. And I would think that the Department of Justice would have something to say about that, but it doesn't seem like they really care. And in the past 4 years, I've gotten no response from them after submitting numerous complaints. I'm planning to actually go to the DOJ office in Sacramento and try to talk to somebody face to face and hope that that will do something. But they just don't want to be involved, and they don't want to take on this corruption. And when I was a kid living in Siskiyou County, I remember hearing about this corruption. So this has been going on for a long time. I just didn't realize that it really affected normal people the way it's affecting me. I thought it was a little bit of, one hand washes the other, and,
Right, right.
people are helping each other maybe in ways that are costing taxpayers money. But I didn't realize it was this kind of, assault against people, which is horrible.
Well, I think I'm going to have to do a follow-up show with you to find out how this turns out. But being a writer, for some reason, I see a script in all of this, and a possible movie, and maybe it'll be a hit movie, and that'll pay to get the neighbors off of the property, or at least leave you alone. Well,
Yes.
Russ, I can't thank you enough for taking some time to talk to me. I wish you the best with that old fogey yoga. I want to know more about that. I want to go to your website and find out, because I think I could be a one of your students for the old fogey
Now
yoga.
I haven't started shooting that yet. I haven't recorded any video for it. I'm hoping to do that this spring because of the fact that my living situation has been in such turmoil. I haven't really had a studio where I could shoot it. So I'm planning, now that the weather is warmer, to go to parks and shoot these videos in the park. But I will certainly let you know.
Let me know, and then we'll schedule a show and all to talk about the old fogey yoga, because I think that would be make for a great show too.
Excellent. So, yeah, I'd love to do it.
Thanks again for taking the time and all. I always end my show by saying, be yourself, because everyone else is taken. And
Yes.
Russ Farnsworth certainly is taken. That's for sure. And I wish you the very, very best in all that you do, and look forward to talking with you again in the future. And folks, thanks again for spending some time on another edition of Someone You Should Know. Go out and make it a good day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Someone You Should Know.